everyone, this is Oscar from Underdog, and today I want to talk about vocoders. What are vocoders? Let's do the education part first. A vocoder is an audio effect unit, and what it does is it takes any signal, like let's say a synthesizer tone, just a very stable synthesizer tone, something like this. And we're going to put this aside for a moment. We're going to call this the carrier signal. This is going to carry the sound, right? And then we're going to go to another signal. We're going to call that the modulation signal. And imagine it's my voice, right? And so what you'll do with my voice is you'll put it through a vocoder, which splits it into a whole bunch of different bands, like little bandpass filters to detect how strong is my voice in every single band. And then it's going to take that information and apply that to the carrier signal, so that the shape of my voice is kind of projected onto the carrier signal, and now suddenly the carrier signal sounds like you can understand my voice. Suddenly you can understand, even though this is purely synthesizer sound, you kind of hear the ghost of Oscar speaking through this tone. And if you change the carrier signal, for example, we were using a synthesizer sound now, but let's use white noise instead. If you use white noise, even now you can still understand what I'm saying. Isn't that weird? So today I'm going to show you 3 reasons why you probably want vocoding in your life. And to illustrate it, I'm going to use the BVX, I think. Yes. To illustrate it, I'm going to use the BVX, which is the name of the new Reason vocoder that has just been released. You can follow along applying these concepts using pretty much any vocoder that you have at your disposition, for example, the stock one in Ableton Live. But I'm going to show you some features today that the Reason vocoder has that I haven't seen in any other vocoders. So I'm super excited. Let's get into it. Reason number 1. Okay, so using a vocoder on vocals has at least 2 good reasons for it. And one of them is to evoke a certain style. A vocoder is a classic effect that's been used for decades, and it always evokes a kind of a robotic, futuristic feeling to it. Either as a primary vocal in the case of like a Daft Punk type of way, or as a secondary padding layer behind a main vocal to give it more thickness and body and more of a synthesizer character to it. If a vocoder vibe is a vibe that you want to go for, there is no substitute than to just use a vocoder. However, there's a second reason why you might want to use a vocoder, and that is if you're not super comfortable using your vocals directly in a track. You might be a little bit surprised by what I'm about to tell you, but I'm actually kind of shy. You might be fooled by my YouTube presence, but I'm not an accomplished vocalist, and I'm a little bit nervous about putting my voice directly into a song. But if you're a bit shy about using your voice, like me, a vocoder really helps, also because it doesn't even matter what pitch your voice is using, because it follows the pitch of the keyboard. It is in fact the carrier signal that determines the pitch, not your voice. So I can take a carrier, and let me just use the vocoder default carrier. It sounds like this. And what I'm going to do with that is I'm just going to sing, just going right? I'm just going to go and those 2 signals mixed together. So this signal mixed with right, is going to go a little bit like this. So when you then do a chord, you can just hold down a full chord. And then you can get the emotions of the chord without ever doing anything with your voice. So you can go like... Okay, I'm going to check what this sounds like actually. So as you can imagine, this allows you, if you only do instrumental music, to put your feet a little bit into the vocal territory by using vocal timbres, by using vowel sounds, even mixed in with your synthesizers, and so you now have access to that, because people's ears do respond in a particular way to vowel sounds and to human vocal sounds. So having this tool in your palette does open up doors for you that otherwise you wouldn't have access to. Now let's talk about percussion next. And so the second reason that you might want to use vocoders is because you can put percussion through it instead of your voice, and then that percussion, blended with the synthesizers, turns into some kind of pitched rhythmic loop that blends in perfectly with the tonality of the rest of your track. Okay, so let's talk about routing for a little second, because it all makes sense once you get used to it, but I think it's helpful to walk you through it one time real quick. So to use the Reason vocoder in Live, very concretely, what you're going to need is a MIDI track, like right here, a MIDI channel onto which you load the Reason Rack plugin as an instrument, right? And then inside of the Reason Rack plugin, you're going to go Add Device, and there under Effects, you're going to go to Reason Studios, and there is the BVX. And that's the one that you want to get this exact effect. At first, it can be a tad confusing. In Ableton, it's an instrument, not an audio effect, but an instrument. And then inside of Reason, it's an audio effect. It's a little confusing at first, but it makes sense the more you think about it. So now this vocoder can be played using whatever MIDI input you want to give it. So for instance, I just play these chords. And so that's going to trigger the internal carrier signal right here, the synthesizer. That's cool. But then you got to feed it a vocal as well to get that previous effect. And for that, you just got to go onto a separate channel, add the vocal there. I've got my vocal from mic number 9. You hit monitor in, and then instead of sending the audio to the master, you got to send it to the vocoder. So I send it to the vocoder channel, and then on the vocoder channel, just straight up to the Reason Rack plugin, and then it's going to work. Similarly, now what I want to do is I want to send percussion through it. So what I've done is I've just set up the Ableton 808 core kit, and I've programmed in the most simple loop that you can imagine. Just at random, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send this audio into the vocoder to see what happens. So I go audio 2, and I go to vocoder. There we go. And you can see the vocoder starts reacting now, right? But a vocoder doesn't make any sound if it only has a carrier or only has a modulation signal. It always has to have both. So let's add in a carrier signal. Not bad. I think I'm going to make something a little bit more techno. So what I want is 2 chords, probably 2 complex chords. So imagine the following. I do this C major chord, but let's make it C major 7. And let's make it for 2 bars. And then later on, let's just change a few notes until it sounds right. Not bad. There we go. And so from here you can start tweaking the parameters, and this particular one, the beauty of it is that there are just so many parameters. You can have the vintage mode, you can have the modern mode, you have things like unison, ring mod, you can change the characteristics of the carrier. There's just so much that you can do. Let me explore for a minute to see what kind of shapes I can get out of this. That's gorgeous. And I can choose the emphasis of the curve. So for instance, if I really like those low mids, now it's kind of dark and muted, and I can do the opposite. It's really fresh, biting shape. Nice. Ooh, wow. Right, low resolution means that it seems more like the carrier signal, and high resolution means that it's going to seem more like the modulator signal, right? Let's try some different carriers. Very nice. Ooh. That is a vibe. That could become a whole track. I love this so much. Nice. For real, I'm gonna save this now and turn this into the song of the video. So I'll group that, call it the theme song, and do my next example separately. So remember, we make a MIDI track, we add the Reason Rack plugin, we go here, we go to Effects, we go to the Reason Studios, BVX, that's its name. Apparently it's modeled after the vocoder that Kraftwerk built back when they were doing their thing. And I don't know enough about that to say anything more about it, so there you go. So reason number 3 is white noise effects. As I mentioned earlier, you can use different types of carrier signals, right? And a typical carrier signal would be a sawtooth wave, something that gives you a lot of harmonics to chew on, something that's very pitched. However, using white noise is also a totally viable option, and it gives you these kind of splashes that you can use as cymbal crashes, as hi-hats, as sweeping effects, all sorts of secondary unpitched percussion in your track can be white noise, and those can be generated using vocoders. So for example, on this one, instead of using the oscillators, I use the noise. And so what I'll do is I'll send literally any signal in there, and you're going to hear the noise splashing. And from there, we can start shaping our white noise. So for example, here, go for an 808, and all I gotta do is put a simple drum on there. Let's put a little hand clap on there. And the audio of that we send to Reason 3. And then what we do is we just make sure that autoplay here is on so that it's always going to play that white noise, and then we hit play. There we go. Look at that. That little hand clap is now giving us a little white noise percussion thing that we can then shape using attack and decay here. So for example, this decay turns it into a crash. Down here, the color makes it even brighter or darker. So it's more like brown noise or white noise. Nice. You can put some resonance on there. Pretty nice. You can change the format of it. And then we can add in those effects. This nice unison on it. So suddenly you've got control over these crazy white noise effects. And something that's then a bit unique to Reason is that you can add things like, for instance, the matrix sequencer, which is just a step sequencer that allows you to send out different control voltages that can then affect any parameter in the BVX. So you can take this matrix, flip it around by hitting tab. These little cables are, for me, what I love Reason for so much. And oh, look at this, it's already hooked itself up. I don't want that because I want to think a little bit for a moment. I want my curve CV, I want it to go to CV1. Let's do that. So this way I can draw in a curve like this, and then I can route inside of this plugin. I can say CV1 goes to something interesting. Like let's imagine this ring mod mix, for example. So let's go effects, effect mix. How about that? Turn it on and then amounts to the maximum. So let's see what this gives. Cool. Okay, not bad, but I want something more drastic. Like, for example, maybe the noise color. How about that? Noise color. So this allows you to create one-shots and energy bursts wherever you need them in your song, either as a transition effect or as a secondary texture that sort of sits behind the other percussion textures that you've got. So are vocoders for you? Well, probably yes. Imagine you're in pop music, then it's a surefire way to make your sounds futuristic and to add extra color to your vocals. If you're in something more abstract, repetitive, or minimalist like house or techno, then it's a sound sculpting tool that allows you to blend between different properties of different sounds in a completely unique and very, very intuitive way. The exploration options in this are limitless, so go out there and paint a little bit with sound. If any of this went a bit too fast for you, go follow my Foundations of Electronic Music course, which is where I take absolute beginners through to being intermediary producers in Ableton Live. Come show us on the Discord channel what you did with this. If the Reason vocoder seems like something for you, it comes included in the Reason Plus subscription bundle, and if you follow the link in the description, you get 30% off. And if you're interested in this kind of sound blending, creating derivative layers technique, go check out my shadow grooves and shadow harmony videos right here. Whatever you end up doing, I want you to stay producing, be good to one another, and take care. Bye-bye.